Coming up in news tonight, nurses planning a strike vote. Minister of State for Public Service has a word for finance officers, and the Department of Inland Revenue making some inroads in tax collections. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lissy Bastian. It's Thursday, June 2nd. Thanks for staying with us. With workers across the Bahamas preparing to mark the 61st Sir Randall Fox Labor Day Parade tomorrow, a number of issues and matters of concern nurses have are the driving forces behind Bahamas Nurses Union BNU President Amanchel Williams' announcement that nurses are preparing to cast a strike vote. Nurse Williams telling JCN News that there are still a number of challenges that they want the government to address, including an unsigned industrial agreement, poor working conditions in many of the public healthcare facilities, and they want a 40% salary scale increase.
We're looking for a scaled increase. The industrial agreement speaks to increases. That is what we want our Prime Minister to give us. Come and sign an industrial agreement where we have 2 increases to our scale than rather than a lump sum. We don't want no more lump sum. We cannot take a lump sum to the bank. We cannot get a loan for a mortgage with a $50 increment. We want our scale to be increased to 40%. We are professional, trained, licensed nurse with bachelor's and master's degree. Amen. We want to be paid.
Amen. Now, according to the Nurses Union president, these infrastructural challenges are not limited to New Providence facilities, as she also brought to light poor and unsanitary conditions for nurses on Abaco even years after Hurricane Dorian.
In Abaco, toilets can't flush in the various wards. The nurses come to work, they have to be toting water. Could you imagine? You might as well stay home. If you're toting water in a time of 2022 to ensure that your bathrooms are flushed, this is serious. 2 and 3 months. We have 2 wards, 40 patients admitted in an accident emergency waiting for a bed. Those nurses have to work very hard in those various areas. So you can imagine if you're coming in with an emergency and you have 40 patients already waiting to be admitted. We're overworked and underpaid and not respected.
As it stands, Nurse Williams says the BNU has been meeting with the Public Hospitals Authority, PHA. However, she questions the absence of meetings with the Department of Public Service representing the Ministry of Health. As for the Prime Minister's announcement last week regarding the government's intent to compensate nurses, the BNU president says that it's not enough.
We're having a strike vote referencing all the issues that we have. Infrastructure issues, industrial agreement is not signed. We have air conditions down in various wards for 3 and 4 months. We have health and safety concerns with mold. Nurses are being diagnosed with mold in their lungs and are previously now have to pay out of their pockets. We have the worst insurance going. And so the nurses are not covered with these insurance, providing that the institution that they work for is causing the hazard.
The healthcare sector has been losing countless nurses to the U.S. and Canada in recent years. Nurse Williams is calling on the government to do more, as she says the government is paying them pennies on the dollar. The BNU is calling on nurses across the country to come out and vote. The strike vote is set for Thursday, June 9th. Just last Tuesday, Bahamas Public Service Union BPSU President Kimsley Ferguson, along with finance officers, protested outside the office of the Prime Minister following comments made by Minister of State for Public Service Pia Glover-Roll, who suggested that financial officers in the public sector adjusted their salaries without proper approval, resulting in $4 million being overpaid to them. The BPSU at the time demanded an apology from the state minister while threatening legal actions. Well, the state minister, during her contribution to the budget debate today, addressed these claims in a well-executed fashion that no one saw coming.
I will refer to Romans 13, 1 through 5, and it reads as such. Obey the government, for God is the one who put it there. Wow. All governments have been placed in power by God. For the authorities do not frighten people who are doing right. Wow. They frighten those who do wrong. Wow. So, this is the word. It's the word. It's a real word. So do what they say, and you will get along well. Wow. The authorities are sent by God to help you. But if you are doing something wrong, of course you should be afraid, for you will be punished. The authorities are established by God for that very purpose, to punish those who do wrong.
Making it very clear she is standing firm on her claims in regards to findings of the audit report, the state minister went on to note that the conclusions of the audit report is up for discussion with those involved.
As it relates to the conclusions of the final internal audit report on the finance and accounting officer scales, as you know, this matter has been in the news, and I believe the Bahamian people do deserve both transparency and resolution on this matter. So East Grand Bahama, the matter is open for discussion with all parties who are being engaged, and we are moving steadily towards resolution. That's the focus.
Now, JCN News tried reaching out to the BPSU president for a response to the state minister, but was unsuccessful up to news time. Inflation is being addressed by the Davis administration. Prime Minister Philip Davis speaking to the uptick of global inflation within the last few months as a result of Russian invasion of Ukraine. He says it's the worst global inflation we have seen in decades, adding that the high cost of living is truly an emergency.
The necessities of life are too expensive for almost everyone. In truth, the cost of living was too high even before the global inflation crisis. But now we are in new territory. Food prices alone have gone up 20%. Since last year. The cost of everything keeps going up, but paychecks for those lucky enough to have work are not keeping pace.
Now, as the Prime Minister says, the first priority of the budget was to put a package of measures in place to help Bahamians cope with inflation when suggesting solutions for the country in reference to the looming economic crisis. He contends that though the drivers of inflation cannot be addressed by the policies made in the Bahamas, the government can bring down the costs within its control and work to make sure those savings are passed on to consumers.
Let's start with the reduction of customs duties on nearly 3 dozen food items. The goal here is to include many of the most frequently consumed foods, like eggs, chicken parts, flour, cheese, and corn, and to make healthier foods less expensive too, including broccoli, carrots, spinach, cucumber, beans, and cabbage. We have included funding, Madam Speaker, for new enforcement personnel at the Price Control Commission to make sure the savings are passed on to consumers.
They wasn't checking for that part of it, nor the 60% increase in the tax on poor people.
We have increased social assistance, as I said, by 50% in comparison to pre-pandemic levels. And RISE, a conditional cash transfer program, will provide additional assistance with requirements to participate, including ensuring that children in the household keep up with school attendance and medical checkups.
Measures in the national budget include investments to making home ownership more accessible, significant investments in agriculture to increase the nation's food security and reduce the food import bill, and an increase in the minimum wage in the public sector, which is set to begin next month. Well, Member of Parliament for East Grand Bahama, Kwesi Thompson, slamming the government as being fiscally irresponsible. In his contribution to the budget debate on Wednesday, Mr. Thompson contends that this 2022-2023 national budget shows how fiscally irresponsible this government is when budgets should be evidence of how fiscally responsible a government is. The former Minister of State for Finance under the previous Minnis administration says the government's budget misses the mark and fails to take full advantage of valuable opportunities left by the Free National Movement administration. In slamming the government's plans outlined, Mr. Thompson says that the PLP budget has a material and significant difference from its fiscal strategy report, further noting that the government committed to spending no more than $2.6 billion in the upcoming budget and would keep the deficit to no more than $415 million. However, total expenditure is forecasted at $3.3 billion, with a projected revenue collection of $2.8 billion, with this administration forecasting a deficit of $564 million. Mr. Thompson, in chastising the PLP administration, further contends that they are clearly unable or unwilling to meet their own spending and deficit targets, as he claims they are ignoring their own fiscal objectives without any reasonable cause in the law. He says this is the height of being fiscally irresponsible. With all the new allowances made as it relates to taxes under the new Davis administration's budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023, and the latest revelation that the Department of Inland Revenue is owed up to $1 billion in property taxes, Acting Comptroller of the Bahamas Department of Inland Revenue provides a breakdown of their debt collection plan. Our Austin Fernando has more in this report.
Following the revelation by the Bahamas Department of Inland Revenue a few weeks ago that Bahamian property owners have accrued arrears on real property taxes of some $1 billion, Acting Comptroller of the Department of Inland Revenue, Ms. Shonda Strawn, gives an update on the department's debt collection activity.
The Department of Inland Revenue is working very hard, diligently, to collect the taxpayers' revenue, because it's your revenue, right? It belongs to you, and it is really to help our country to do all those things that we need to do, the roads, the schools, the hospitals, and all those things. So really what's happening is compliance. We're really all about compliance. I know all of you would have heard about the $1 billion in arrears, because that was the highlight that came out of our press conference a couple of weeks ago. And we are really very actively coming up with ways to collect out those funds. A lot of it is real property tax, as you're aware. More than $700 million of it really stems from uncollected real property taxes. And the other $200+ million, of course, is from value-added tax and business license. So from the Department of Inland Revenue's perspective, our budget for this current fiscal year, our revenue budget, was some $830-odd million, and we're now at $930 million. So we're just about $100 million over projections.
Speaking at the press briefing at the Office of the Prime Minister Thursday morning, Ms. Strawn says that major progress is being made, and thus far, they've exceeded their projections.
This is the Department of Inland Revenue's revenue figures. So from July 2021 to let's say last week, we have collected $930,571,000, and that's broken down. $136 million of that is real property. 712 of that is VAT, but out of that 712, 220 million of that is only coming from VAT on conveyances. So that tells us that this is a buyer's market. So that was a good thing. We were excited about that. Out of 712 million of the VAT collected from the Department of Inland Revenue, I'm not dealing with customs numbers now, because you got VAT at the border. We need 2 hours for that. But from inland revenue, persons that file and pay at inland revenue pay their VAT. Out of that 712 million, some 220 million of that came from the stamping of conveyances, VAT on conveyances, property transfers. And then the little 81 million was business license, right, and other things.
Speaking to the significant changes being made in the policy that governs real property tax, the acting controller also revealed that since July of 2021, the Department of Inland Revenue, through their reassessment initiative, has collected some $930 million in taxes, with 71% in value-added tax, 8% in property conveyance, and the remainder in real property tax. As for persons with long-standing accounts with significant arrears, Ms. Strawn sends this message.
If you have significant arrears and your property is mortgaged, go and see your lender. Go and talk to your mortgagee, right? Because between the two of you, they will be able to assist, I'm sure. And I'm saying it that way because the department really isn't able to extend long payment plans any longer. We're in collections mode. And so in previous years, we had amnesties. The last one just ended in September. September of last year, we had an amnesty where if you were in arrears, you could have gotten up to 50% off your real property tax arrears. So all of that is done now, and we're now in full collections mode. So if you have significant arrears and your property is mortgaged, we encourage you to have a conversation with your lender and see how best they can pay those taxes and maybe extend you a facility. If your property is not mortgaged, please come in and see us, right? Because we're in another 2 weeks, we're going to move fully into collections mode. And what that means is that we will be distributing accounts to private collections. And when accounts go to private collections, that's yet another fee that you really don't need and you don't have to pay if you simply come in and have a conversation with us.
Reporting for JCN News, I'm Austin Fernando.
You're watching JCN News. When we return, one minister says it's time to do away with the Queen's honors. The government plans to settle all private legal matters. Stay with us.